Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Diane Wells, CEO and founder of Rendell Intelligence and Insights, is back, and it's the big one, Di. This one covers Christmas.
It is. It's the final month of the year, the key one for retail out there.
And are we going to be impressed? Are we going to be disappointed? Is it going to pan out as we think? Because we've had a bit of an up and down year, haven't we? It started off a bit gloomy, got a bit better, then plateaued off. We had a change of government. We had Donald's in power as we speak now, so all the American unrest, weather wasn't great. So it's been a turbulent economic year and year of change. So has it all come good at the end?
I would love to say yes. Unfortunately, I can't say that.
I thought you might say that.
Yeah. There are some indicators that are interesting and are, I think it's important for the industry to be aware of. But generally, it's been a really challenging Christmas. And we're coming out, this was coming from a Christmas last year where inflation was much higher, interest rates had obviously gone up, and everyone was reeling from that. And we were hopeful that this year would be sort of a bit of a recovery. That wasn't to be the case. But it has yielded some interesting trends that I think we ought to keep a watch on for the coming year, because that's going to impact how retailers look at their businesses.
So give us the key headlines then.
Right. So we look at footfall first. So footfall, obviously, number of people, volume of customers, down in December year on year by 2.2%, according to Sensormatic. And this was better than last December when it was down by 5%. So that's something. And however, this December did not included Black Friday this year. So that 2.2% reduction actually includes Black Friday, which doesn't sound very positive, does it? But it's coming from November where it was down 4.5%. So footfall's down. Sales, as measured by the BRC, so this includes online and offline sales, actually increased in December year on year by 3.2%, which sounds encouraging, but November was down by 3.3%, and November didn't include Black Friday, hence 3.3% down. December did, 3.2% up. So BRC was saying that actually their narrative was that actually December did not help the quarter. The quarter was a pretty awful quarter. And in terms of sales in high streets, which is produced by Beauclair, so this is in-store sales in high streets, which is a really good barometer of what's happening in retail generally, sales were down by 7.9% year on year from December last year. And that's the worst result since about July, when it was down 9.3%. So pretty abysmal. But Beauclair work on a calendar month. So their December did not include Black Friday, but their November did, and sales were up by 1% in November due to the success of Black Friday, when on the day itself, sales were up 14.5% in high streets. So high streets really responded to Black Friday, as we talked about in our last.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Chatted.
So that says then, I suppose, people have gone early this year.
Yeah, they have gone early.
Last year.
Yeah, last year. I've got to get my head around. We're in 2025. So yes, they went early. They made the most of Black Friday, and of course, Black Friday was a week later, so it was closer to Christmas. So it was like everything was set up and running for Christmas. So it felt like it was Christmas trading, which helped Black Friday this year. It wasn't helped because consumer confidence has been low. It was improved slightly from November in December at -17. Improvement on -18, and that's from GfK. So, but it's still not great. But I think what was interesting, and the interesting trend I picked out from the Beauclair data particularly, was that the reduction in sales in high streets was driven by fewer customers. We talked about the drop in footfall, fewer transactions, but actually the ATV was virtually the same as last year. So what that's telling me straight away is that those who have money are spending more, but there are a lot of people out there who are spending a lot less. Mm-hmm. Or not spending at all. And so it's all this polarization of spend is taking place. So, the people with cash who are savings, who maybe are retired, who don't have mortgages, they're insulated. But everyone else is really finding it quite challenging.
And that's then, I suppose, impacted by, we talked about it before, I think, is it the end of January 25, where there's the next tranche of people whose fixed rates mortgage disappears?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a whole tranche of people coming through that are going to see this fixed rate mortgage disappear. And of course, we've heard messages coming out of the city that interest rates are not going to drop as we'd hoped they would. Inflation is pretty stubborn at the moment. It dropped in December to 2.5% from 2.6% in November, but it's not moving, downward rapidly. There are some bright spots in inflation. Clothing and footwear inflation has dropped. It's at just 1.1% in December, which was good. But things like restaurants, things that affect our spending pattern, they're still 3.4%. So, and of course, this is still increasing prices. We forget that, if there's low inflation, it's fantastic. But actually, it means that all the increases we've had historically have been now baked in, and we're seeing further increases. So that's still a challenge for consumers.
I suppose just to give people a check on, at the time of recording, current headlines, so Morrison's, the time of recording, have just announced 200 job cuts for retail people team. We've got Sainsbury's, who've just announced 3,000 job cuts as part of their looking at cost. There's River Island cutting head office jobs amid profit struggles. Poundland have, according to the papers, got Alex Partners in looking at how they can trade their way out of some poor trading conditions. So there's not many good news stories from big organisations, and part of me thinks that's based off some of the numbers we've just discussed in Christmas, but also the pending NI threshold drop and increase in national living wage. So this run from January through to start of April, when they kick in, it could be really significant in jobs, unemployment, economy itself, and set the store for the rest of the year.
Absolutely. And of course, yesterday, as we were recording, Primark came out with some very poor results, which, Primark have been sort of the handrail for the high street, and they're a good indicator of what's happening out there, because, they're a value retailer. They're the darling of the high street, but they don't have a transactional website. They trade out of store only. And most of those are in high street locations, and they had a really tough time. So that's reflecting the fact that those people who don't have spare cash are not spending. They're just feeling really, really concerned. And all this, the pending impact of the increase in NI is making people feel nervous. They know their employers are making changes and cuts to try and offset that. They're aware of it. And so they're feeling vulnerable. And in fact, GfK, they have released their consumer confidence index for January. So they work on a mid-month cycle. Mm-hmm. So their January results have just come out, and actually consumer confidence has dropped from -17 overall index score in December to -22 in January. So that's a significant drop. And that's reflecting how people are feeling about their economic situation personally, and also the wider economic situation across the UK.
Yeah, so just to circle back on the Primark stuff. So Primark UK and Ireland sales declined by 4%, 16 weeks to 4th of Jan 25, 6.8% like for like. But then if you compare that to Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and US all increased. So the US recorded a 17% rise, Central and Eastern Europe growing by 22%. So just some wider worldwide context of, it's acutely us at the moment, unfortunately.
It is. Primark are a new entry into the US, so they're a bit of a darling out there. So they've got those newbie gains, to be fair.
Yeah.
And they're going for big flagship stores in places like Chicago and Boston that are super duper, looking beautiful. So partly that will be that. But, I think you're right. It's an underlying trend here that it's us. And, we've got this, thing at the end of the road sitting there waiting for us to hit us on the head, and everyone feels it. Company organisations feel it, consumers feel it. So people are just railing back. And also the thing that I haven't talked about this podcast yet is savings.
Yep.
People are still saving 10% of their household income, and that's a higher than it's been since COVID. Because people feel that vulnerable, they want some backup, and so they're trying to make sure they set their finances straight before they move on, and before anything happens to their jobs. So that's still reining in their spending, particularly, and also underlying that there's structural shifts around consumer demand. We're very much focused on self-care and holidays and entertainment. That's our priority as consumers increasingly. So if you want a holiday this year, you're not going to go out spending in the high street necessarily.
Yeah, it's interesting. A number of conversations I've been having over the last couple of weeks. Hospitality is going to be tricky because it's where people will pull back, and we know that they've already had a tricky time. That whole COVID piece and post, that people are uncertain about recruitment. They're uncertain around annual pay rises that typically come April the 1st for those that are on a salary, along with national living wage. So there's a real sense of uncertainty as ever. I think the strong will survive. There'll be some consolidation, which is good if it keeps people in jobs. But I suppose my mind's starting to get to the place of, I think this is going to be really tricky to slash costs and save your way out of it. I think the smart organisations will find the sweet spot of tech and people, and we'll focus on driving ATV. The thing I've been talking about in a number of sessions pre and post Christmas is it's really difficult to get new customers. And to some degree, in lots of organisations, that's marketing's job. That's, trading's job, buying's job. As an operator, you can't go and get people off the street and get them into your shop. You've got to rely on other supporting functions. But I think businesses need to be focusing on the ATV. If you can drive ATV, i.e. sell more to the same people, that's got to be the way to win, because that grows sales, which then gives you the flexibility and the headroom to do all the other stuff that you need to do to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. And actually the cost of that sale is much lower, because, trying to acquire new customers, it's very expensive, because through the marketing function, you need to really push out there. There's a lot of noise out there.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. The fact that this polarization is taking place amongst people who have money are spending more and those who are not. If you can actually just increase the ATV of those customers, and of course, once the customers come in the store, just convert them. The conversion, is typically quite low amongst a lot of retailers. Once they walk through the door, do everything you can to sell them something. And that makes, just because they've come in the first place, so you don't have to incur any additional costs to sell to them. It's literally just colleague employee time, but maximise that opportunity. And as you say, that will where some of the low hanging fruit gains will be made.
Yeah, and we're not going to do that by locking everything up, putting it behind cabinets because shrink's high, and then having less people on the floor. There's a real, and again, it's been a theme of some of the stuff I've been talking about. There's a real fine line between loss prevention and sales prevention. And I think, again, some organisations have stepped into that. We've reduced shrink, which I know is a big problem and really challenging for everybody in certainly in customer facing organisations. But sometimes what you save, you damage in sales. And again, there'll be a turn. People will take the cabinets off. The biggest thing we've seen to reduce shrink is having a presence of people. So the more people you can recycle onto the floor, one, back to your point, you've got somebody there for the conversation. Morning, we've got this on offer. Oh, I see you bought this. This goes really well with it. All that stuff that, if it drives ATV by 50p, that's massive. But also helps with the shrink point of view of the opportunity still be put off by presence. The professionals, the gangs, unfortunately, they are what they are, and that's really difficult. But the opportunity still be put off by people being around.
I think that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. And of course, the additional sales you generate can to some degree offset the shrink, so you're right. There has to be this balance, because it is very non-customer friendly to see everything locked up or empty jars and empty pots and all that sort of stuff. And, customers know that when retailers do it, that their priority is about security. And it's not a nice buying experience. And it just pushes you either to another retailer or online, because it becomes very transactional.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's lots to play for. Let's finish on a positive note, because there's been some quite significant figures, certainly some negative ones there, hasn't there? I think there's lots to play for. And for me, the key is, I don't think you can just save your way out of this. You've got to be tactical in some areas, as we talked about what's happening in the press. But actually, strategically, it's got to be about people. It's got to be about driving ATV. That's where the opportunity, and sales mass everything. Once sales start to grow, it gives you so much flex and so much belief in a business. All the doom and gloom disappears. So that's the positive from me. we'll see what January holds. Di, I have a funny feeling we might be repeating some of this conversation in Feb.
Yeah.
But let's see. And thanks again for joining us. Thanks for 2024, and we'll keep the conversation going this year.
Great. That's been great, Simon. Really look forward to every month.
Good. We'll catch you soon.
Take care. Bye.